Welcome to Agency Office Hours for August 2023. I'm Agency Advisor Karl Sakas, and here's a preview of the questions that I will be answering about helping you grow your agency this month, this year, and beyond. First up, we have a question from RK about productized services. In particular, how to go about productizing your services in the first place. Then we have a question from Jonathan about account management. How do you keep your clients happy while keeping work in scope? I'll share about a new way to get my one-on-one help at Sakas & Company. Then we have a question from Had about sales without selling. Specifically, is it possible to get your clients to buy by clicking a Buy Now button? Finally, we have a question from Ashley about standard operating procedures, SOPs. In particular, how to go about documenting best practices around documenting your internal processes. If I've mentioned your question, be ready to unmute yourself and come on camera. And if you have a question that you'd like me to answer at a future event, we're meeting every month, feel free to include your question when you RSVP, and we'll let you know ahead of time if you're on the list. And of course, you can always join and listen in. You don't have to ask a question to join the office hours. As a reminder, we are recording today, so if you're joining us live, don't say anything out loud that you don't want to become public. And if you are joining us live, you'll get the video via email within 24 hours. If you're watching the recording, well, you've got everything right now, although you missed out on your own chance to ask questions. Would love to have you at a future event. All right, well, first up, we have a question from RK about productized services. RK, if you want to come on camera and unmute, welcome to Agency Office Hours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karl. So I'm just humbled, and grateful for this opportunity. We have a long history, like I did a 911 call with you over clarity.fm.
Yep.
And then we met at HubSpot inbound event in Boston, I think a few years ago.
It's been quite a while. Well, I'm glad to have you as a guest today.
Thank you. Thank you, Sek. Like it's been, Sakas & Company has been like an amazing, experience and great, valuable, actionable insights for my entire team to follow.
Thank you.
Especially, the competencies and the warmth, and things like that was like, really amazing experience to, for you to share with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, thinking about your particular question today, you reached out to paraphrase, and I'll share the question if you could elaborate a bit, and then we'll answer the question. You asked, how should we go about productizing our services?
Correct.
If you could elaborate a bit, where are you now, and what are you thinking about?
Yeah. So according to me, what I've learned from the concepts of productized service is when you have a very standard offering where you have a set, guarantee, or not a guarantee, maybe outcome. You have a set, deliverables. You have a set pricing, which allows an agency to scale without having to customize a quote for every client that comes in.
Yes.
And the processes are completely replicable from one client to the next. Often reuse assets that you've built for your previous clients. Yes. So it cuts down the amount of time that it takes to serve a client and show them results rather than building everything from scratch all over again. So this is the concept that I started off building a productized service. And at this point, I have honed into one niche for B2B tech companies listed on clutch.co or software reviews or g2.com and things like that, where you find these B2B companies that are already listed. I will also use that as my resource to reach outreach channels. And the offer that I'm making for them through the productized service called Nurture Content is content that nurtures your existing leads into buying customers while attracting new leads.
Nice. So, and you also know, especially for instance, if they have a paid Clutch listing, they're willing to spend money.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. And also on Google Ads, I'll see who are the ones who are already spending money on ads and stuff like that.
Got it.
So yeah, I mean, of course. So that will be the go-to-market strategy, but the product itself is how to help implement these email nurturing and nurture content like blog posts, keep it in touch strategies like newsletters, and activation email sequences and things like that, which they might not be using, because of which they are not treating their old unconverted leads as a revenue source. So that's the point. That's the pain I'm trying to solve in the market. And where I need your help specifically is in pricing, and packaging and productizing it. So, I think I was clear about my target audience and the pain that I'm solving. And the deliverables are things like, blogging, like power posts, the kind of content that you create on your website, Carl. The kind of content that really is not technical, but it kind of it triggers a thought in people's mind about us, relatability on how they can, you know, it need not be very technical at all, is my point, because let's say cybersecurity, right?
Yes.
The vulnerabilities, the threats, the possible, I would be focusing on problems and not really, the technical solutions that they may have, which might be very difficult for anybody to grasp or understand. So a series of blog posts like that, an email newsletter, a monthly, and a reactivation sequence called a lead nurture sequence, which brings back the old leads to a potential deal in the pipeline, and some social media posts to support that initiative, so that when people do check out their brand online, it doesn't feel like it's a ghost town.
Right. That would be not
Yeah.
ideal. Well,
Correct.
so thinking about this, and RK, to your specific question around approaching productization, and by the way, for everyone else listening in, whether live or on the recording, RK, you've mentioned some really important things. You're clear on your target market. You know where to find them. They're gathering in particular places. You also have some indicators as to whether they are likely to spend money, because if they're spending money already, I have a client who does this, who focuses on law firm digital marketing. And one of the things to look at is, does the firm have a lot of billboards around a city? If they're spending a lot of money on billboards, they probably would benefit from digital marketing as a more measurable way to approach things. So that's good. You also have a clear idea of what will get results around doing a nurture. And you also know that they have these unconverted leads. You could even use as a qualifier. Do you have at least 100 or 1,000 or whatever the number ends up being, to know that you need enough to actually work the leads? Also, you mentioned you're focused on B2B. Typically, B2B clients are going to have full-time salespeople, that they're going to need people to actually work the leads once the nurture raises their hand to get help. So overall, the overall targeting and the service combo makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
So question of now what? So ultimately the
packaging, right? Am I giving away too much? Or, I've seen great results with a client that I've worked in the past, for whom I helped them build case studies, success based on the success stories. And they use that case study and a success story as a powerful leverage to, reach out to their potential customers and say that, hey, we bought this result. So with just that one single tool, it was a hospital management system, provider. So, it was really good, results for them to kind of use the case studies as a tool for their sales team to reach out to the old leads and trying to reconvert them. So I have that validated offer. So with this thing, I'm trying to cover all bases, if you can say that, with if this doesn't work, the other one works, kind of a thing. Am I offering too much? And the pricing I had in mind was $2,000 per month, starting from $2,000 per month. And it includes, your case study building, your ebook lead magnet creation, your social media posts, your power pages, which is like long, lengthy blog posts, which acts as the ultimate guide and things. The reason I'm able to offer this for such a low cost is because I'll be leveraging, ChatGPT and AI tools to do a lot of the writing. But research still will be done by a human. And of course, the first output is not going to be the final one. Correct.
AI assisted, but still human doing it.
Correct.
I mean, certainly that's a great price point. And if you think about, B2B clients typically selling things themselves at a higher price
Mhm.
point, you don't have to help them sell that many incremental more units for this to work out. So that all sounds promising. I think one of the key things that I would recommend you look into is around what is the paid discovery offer to
Mhm.
understand what you're getting into before.
Right. So I'm calling it as the nurture scorecard.
So
And it'll ask them questions like how often do you blog? Do
yes,
you have a system to convert your leads into customers? Blah
yes,
blah blah. And at the end, it'll give them a score saying that you scored 68 out of 100.
nice.
And
And
say that schedule a call to understand what you can do to fill the gap.
got it. And with the scorecard, are you approaching that as a paid discovery offer or is it a free scorecard or how
It's
are
a
you approaching?
free, right now I'm thinking it as a free thing. And
Yeah.
then I also can offer something like a nurture pack for $297 to give
Yeah.
them a sample of, like there are so many essential things that then you need to do in place anyway, like
Yes.
creating a brand voice,
Yep.
your persona, your avatar, your pain to pleasure equation and things like that. So these are the things which is a part of the foundational thing anyway.
Yeah.
So offering that as a $297 one time, thing to give them a sample of what they're going to get in the future, so this would act like a really good tripwire, maybe of
I,
sorts.
I think so. Definitely is worth trying. And for some people listening, you're like, why would you give away, what you're going to do in the nurture? But I think if someone is going to solve all of their problems through an info product of here are the sample nurtures we would do, they're probably not going to pay you a lot of money to run it for them.
Correct. So this is a
So,
custom thing, custom nurture pack for their particular, case.
oh,
It's,
oh,
so
oh,
it's not something
that's an
pre-made.
even better deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which does get into, on a productization standpoint, some clients, it might be a 3 email nurture that they need. Others need a 10 email nurture over a year or something like that. I mean, there are
Mm,
different strategies there. And so it may help to think from a productization standpoint, maybe there's a
3 tiers,
three
right?
tiers. Yeah, maybe it's sort of a small, medium, large. Those
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
be the names for it, but if someone has a really simple nurture,
Right.
that's one price point. There's the medium one, and
Correct.
and
Yes.
to an extent, you could let clients choose. You might say, for instance, based on your situation, small or medium would be a match. Large
Mhm.
would be overkill. Or you might
Right.
say, we probably recommend medium or large. Small isn't going to work for you. Which one do you want? And that way they're, I talk about reason options choose, they're
Mhm.
choosing, but among the options you offer. So
Mm.
this all sounds promising. What have you launched so far?
Just a landing page right now.
Got it, got it. I,
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
I have offered the service as under my main brand called Web Namaste
yeah,
for other clients. But this
yeah,
is like I don't want to offer that under Web Namaste anymore because I want
mm,
this to be like its own offer. And I'm also writing a book about it called Nurture Content. And I have the
oh,
domain name nurturecontent.com.
hey,
So like I'm trying to rebrand it in such a way that even if I have to sell it in future, I can just sell
yes,
this division.
got it. That makes sense. And
Correct.
certainly, the fact that it's productized means it certainly makes it easier to, uh, to
Correct.
sell it.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, that's not the URL actually. Let me paste the right one.
okay, got it, got it.
Yeah. It's
There we go. Well, why don't we do this?
yeah.
We're going to move on to the next Q&A segment, but for anyone who's joining live, you've seen the links in chat, and in particular, thanks RK for the specific link. If you have feedback on that, go ahead and share it in chat. Would love to hear what you have to say. So, RK, this sounds really promising. Let's see if
Thank you.
anyone else has any feedback in chat, and
Absolutely.
let me know how it goes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining.
It's still a mock-up actually, this link. Please, it's
Ah.
not even live yet. Yeah.
Oh, well, but see, good to get it out there, get
Yeah.
feedback from
Sure.
fellow agency leaders. So
Yeah.
cool. Well,
Thank you.
RK, thank you very much. All right. Let's see, Kate, who is up next?
We have Jonathan.
All right. Jonathan, welcome. Let's get you on. Here we go. Dun, dun. All right. Jonathan, welcome to Agency Office Hours.
Thanks, Carl. Great to be here.
Yes. Well, the question you had was around account management and scope creep and dealing with all of that. So to paraphrase, you asked, how do we ensure that account managers keep clients happy while also managing the scope? If you could elaborate a bit, and then we'll answer.
Sure, thanks. So I think when I originally submitted this question, this was before taking your scope creep workshop.
Yeah.
So that definitely helped a lot. I think one of the things that your workshop really helped me understand more about was the different roles, possible roles in an agency.
Yes.
So there's account manager, there's also project managers. Sometimes that can be the same person.
Yes.
I think your recommendation is to try and not make that the case if possible.
Ideally, though that's unavoidable for agencies below, say, 12 people. You're going to have someone doing a bit of both, but ideally, aspirationally splitting it.
Yeah. One of my learnings actually related to that since then is actually, so for some context, I run a podcast production agency, and actually one of the terms that I've started to hear my clients sort of flow around is the term of producer, which I think they seem to feel more comfortable having assigned to them, as opposed to necessarily account manager might give the connotation of like, oh, okay, they're just going to like try and upsell me and so on. But having a producer,
the core role, among other things, one of the roles of an account manager, keep the client happy and sell them more.
Yeah. So anyway, I've sort of started thinking about, oh, is there any way you could sort of frame it more around, producer role, and essentially trying to figure out, what does that look like? I think what the client expects might be a bit different from necessarily the title of a job role that you might put out there to find the people with the right kinds of skills. So anyway, that's just something that sort of came out of your workshop and has had me thinking. But kind of going back to the original question, I guess. I suppose I think I've as you've heard me talk about, I've been considering sort of bringing someone into my team to manage more of the client-facing side of things.
Yes.
And up until now, I've mostly kind of dealt with that myself.
Right.
But I guess maybe a lot of what you taught has been very useful, and I've been able to apply some of it. I still find it challenging. So I'd love maybe a little bit of a refresher, or just maybe for someone in a position like me where I'm looking to transition a bit more away from that role. Maybe I'm still doing a lot of it at the moment, but what are some key things to think about and to maybe help train or look for in that other person to bring them into that role where we're trying to keep clients happy, but at the same time, we can't just let them expect the sun and the earth, without having a little bit of like, okay, hold on a second, let's look at the bigger picture. And
and it is worth considering. Some clients will, so really we've got a few things here. Let's focus on this particular angle to start, and then we may meander a bit. Sounds like the core question is looking at how do you get client work off your plate as the agency owner? And there's some follow-up bits to that as well. But if we look at that first, my colleague Kate has shared an article in chat, if people are on live, around how to delegate client work. And one of the biggest challenges in making that happen is that you as the owner know client relationships and know the industry and know what's best for the business itself better than anyone on your team if you don't have someone who's client-facing now, or at least client-facing to own the client relationship. So what do? Well, part of it is finding people who've worked with clients before, so it's not the first time they've ever been in a client-facing role. I like the producer angle you mentioned. That's especially important for your work around working on podcasts, because people assume that a producer, like, they're making it all happen, right? They're going to have some technical skill, they are client-facing, they're working with the internal team. It's sort of a catch-all title. And when agencies use the term producer, if they're more of a, if they might brand themselves as a marketing agency or creative agency, a producer is kind of a project manager with an account management mindset along the way. So I do think producer is a good angle to consider here. So, what do? Well, they need to know enough, and this is true for anyone wearing an account manager hat. They need to know enough about the work. Now, enough, how much is enough? Well, that depends. It depends on the nature of what the agency is doing. So in this case, for instance, your producers are going to need to know enough about creating a show and getting the episodes down and working with editors, and also thinking strategically about, if you're working with a brand new client, how to position their show in the first place and how to go about that. They also should have an idea of norms. Someone, for instance, might suggest a show title if you're working with someone at the very beginning. And ideally, the producer's like, just off the top of their head, they're like, there are 5 other shows with titles just like that. It may make sense to try a different angle, kind of thing. But they don't necessarily need to be the one in there editing the shows. They don't necessarily need to be the one doing guest relations, but they may be advising on guest relations, or someone else is working on that, things like that. So the producer angle makes a lot of sense. How to get things off your plate. One thing to keep in mind is that, and this is true for everyone listening, your legacy clients are never going to want to give up having you as their account manager, because they're used to having you as the account manager, and that's that. Now, it's easier to shift clients that are new clients to other people because they haven't experienced working with you, or maybe they experience working with you as the salesperson, but part of the sales process is you're talking about how amazing your team is, and they're going to take great care of the client. So you're basically transmitting your relationship with the prospect to your team when that prospect becomes a client. So that's an important thing. With existing clients, it's a bit harder because they're used to working with you. Some of that is to dial up the cost of getting to keep working with you. For instance, hey, I'm glad to keep working with you. We've got a great team. I'd recommend that you shift there, and that would keep your existing budget. If you want to work still with me, then there's going to be a surcharge. Maybe they have to commit to spend twice as much per month or something like that. There needs to be a variable. I'm actually exploring doing some market research about this, about my own services, where right now my team helps in certain ways, but I am the primary coach, consultant, advisor, what have you. And people have come in and have asked about getting help at a significantly lower price point than my services. And so one of the things I'm exploring is bringing in coaches that I have worked with in running their agency, that, they've been clients of mine, some for many years and all. And basically they would be the trained and certified by me, and probably at a lower price point. Now I'm testing, is there demand for that? I know there's demand for help at a lower budget, but would that be help for not me? I don't know. We're figuring that out. But in your case, you can do the same thing. You could say, hey, if you want to stay at the existing price level, so-and-so will become your account manager by, and you set a timeline for the transition. Or if you want to keep working with me, glad to do that, but the budget minimum would now be this. But what's your reaction to that as a way to handle existing clients?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that framing. It's not something I'd really thought through in that way. I think also just coming back to sort of that skill set, that's useful for someone that's in that role to come in. What you say about sort of them looking at things a little bit more strategically, it makes me think to myself, I haven't actually got anyone. It would be great if I had someone on my team already that had those skills. I think the thing is, at the moment, I just got a bunch of executors. They're great at executing, but not so strong on, they wouldn't be someone I would really think of as being, the person talking to the client and going through sort of their strategy and thinking at sort of a higher level at things. But it also makes me think, well, there's no reason why I can't start thinking of not just, so there will be a bit more onboarding required. For those new kind of people in that producer, slash project manager role. But I can also start thinking about, okay, the next time I bring on like an audio engineer, maybe I might sort of look for a more rounded skill set, so that should they be interested, they could also move into that role eventually. And then that would give me the advantage of them already being very familiar with all the work that we've previously done as well.
Absolutely. And if you think about that, if they have the certain technical experience, but they want to go beyond merely, what's the latest microphone to use or the latest software. For instance, I'm in the midst of recording the audiobook of my Work Less, Earn More book, and getting ready to record the pickups, the like little, audio fixes and all kind of thing. And in that case, Eli, the engineer, officially job title was, recording engineer, but, he was following along in the details. He was noting, for instance, if I missaid a word, sometimes, that was coming up where I'm going to change what's in the manuscript. He also called out where I had a series of numbers, and I was reading off an old draft where the numbers like didn't quite add up. And then I've updated it since then, but he caught it. He was like, wait a minute, that doesn't add up to 100. And I'm like, oh yeah, I fixed that in the live version of the book, but he caught it, right? So he was paying attention there, kind of thing. And I had actually asked my colleague Diane to join as associate producer. So Eli is the engineer, being the official producer, and then Diane joining. And halfway through the session, I was taking a break. I was like, Diane, I think you can drop off. Like, the engineer was taking care of what needed to happen, and she'd called out some notes, but ultimately, didn't need two people, which certainly helps on budget. Kate has shared an article in chat, my article about how do you train your employees to become client strategists. And ultimately, it's about an apprenticeship program and identifying what are the stages people need to do. So, initially, for instance, a future strategist might start by collecting inputs from the client. And then you, Jonathan, as the lead strategist, do the analysis and make the recommendations. Then over time, maybe you're talking through what the client has shared with the future strategist, and you hear what stands out to them. And you basically talk with each other about what stands out, kind of bouncing ideas off. And then eventually they get more and more involved. And finally, they may someday take on what you're doing. In the meantime, though, what you could do, and this is true for everyone listening, if you're like, okay, I want to get someone else doing the account management, but I still have to do the strategy. Well, that can be okay if the relationship that you frame to your clients is this. So-and-so is the day-to-day account manager, whether they have an AM title or a producer title or a project manager title, but they're also an account manager, whatever it ends up being. They bring you in as the agency owner or someone else on the team as the strategist. For instance, at the beginning of an engagement, you as the strategist, wearing your strategist hat, will be involved in this case, figuring out like what should their show be, what's the format that's a match, how should they think about finding guests, things like that. But then importantly, then you leave, right? And then the account manager or the producer is handling it day to day, and maybe you come back, whether it's every few months or over some period of time, and you come back and you work your strategy magic. Keep in mind that if a strategist is too accessible to a client, they're not going to appreciate the strategy advice. I think I mentioned this example in the How to Stop Scope Creep workshop that you're in. Around, I had a PM title. A client asked a question about something for the strategist on his account. She was out of the office that day, and I told him that, and I said, but actually, I can help you with this, because I'm thinking I had done that before in a previous job, and I walked him through what to do as the project manager, and he said, "Wow, I'm surprised you knew how to do that." Right? So like clients tend to see strategists as these sort of magical beings. If the magical being is just a phone call away anytime the client wants the magical being, the magic kind of fades a bit. So with with all of this in mind, and thank you for your comment there. Jonathan, as we're wrapping up the segment, what stands out to you about things you're going to do from here?
Well, I've got plenty on my reading list. I love the fact that you have an article for everything.
Oh,
it's just amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you've definitely given me a lot to think about. I'm gonna have to take it away and digest it all. I'm glad that these things are recorded as well.
Yes, yeah, always nice to be able to, kind of review. And in fact, one of the things that Kate and I do, Kate serving as producer for the series, is we identify what are the Q&A segments, so that you can actually get a direct link to the specific segment. And so at this point, we have hundreds, over 300 Q&A segments from agency office hours, all available at sakasandcompany.com, and that'll point to the relevant YouTube videos. So when in doubt, yes, there's probably a blog post or a Q&A, although I still have many more articles and many more things to create. So Jonathan, thank you so much for joining, and I would love to hear how it all goes.
Thanks, Karl. I'll keep you posted.
Awesome, thank you. Well, coming up next, we have questions coming up shortly. We'll look at sales without selling, a question from Hod. And then finally, we'll look at SOPs, standard operating procedures, a question from Ashley. But first, a word from our sponsor, me. Today's Agency Office Hours is sponsored by Sakas and Company, helping agency owners find ways to work less and earn more, and creating growth opportunities for agency employees to move up within their organizations and to grow in their careers. Now, if you've thought of hiring me for one-on-one help at your agency, in the past, you've had to choose. You've had to choose between either a comprehensive engagement, executive coaching or custom consulting, with a sizable budget. As someone once said, I charge more than their lawyer, and I noted, well, yeah, that's more than I pay my lawyer too, but unlike your lawyer, my job is to make you millions of dollars, or maybe just hundreds of thousands. So there's the comprehensive side. You get a lot of help, but it's not cheap. Or you could do one-off advice through my bite-sized consulting call. RK mentioned the earlier format for that. That's now the bite-sized consulting call, which is a productized service. You know exactly what you get beforehand, but that's not as comprehensive. So it's not the big commitment, but it's not comprehensive. So, there's nothing in between until now. What I've done is I've found a solution. It's a way to start getting comprehensive help without the full-scale commitment. You can now buy the first phase 1 of comprehensive support on a standalone basis. You get insights about quick wins, about longer-term priorities, and we talk through what you might do next. And there's no ongoing commitment. Now, if you want, you can do a phase 2 optionally and get additional help, further help from there, but it is self-contained. You can take it, work with your team, and implement what you've learned just from the phase 1. And importantly, it's roughly 1/3 of the commitment of doing a traditional project. If that sounds interesting, go to the contact page at sakasandcompany.com. Go to sakasandcompany.com, click contact, and say you'd like to learn more about phase 1. You'd like to learn more about phase 1. And we'll share more information. This is so new, there's not even a landing page for it yet. So go to contact page, say you want to hear more about phase 1. All right, well, next up, we have a question from Hod about sales without selling. Let me get things set up. Here we go. All right, Hod, if you want to come on video and unmute yourself, welcome to Agency Office Hours.
Thank you, Karl, for having me today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you asked a very interesting question around the idea of this. Is there a way to sell your agency services without having to go through a whole sales process? In particular, could you even get people to buy with a buy now button? It's an intriguing question. If you could elaborate a bit on what you're considering, and then we'll answer.
Right. So similar to Radha Krishnan, I also offer a productized service.
Yes.
The difference is that I'm doing it for a very long time, and it's since I've past experience in it, it's going pretty well for me, and I know the exact specifics, so
Yeah.
I have productized it to some extent. The the challenge for me is that a lot of um, consultants, they say that when you're doing cold outreach for your agency, you want to sell them something, you have to sell the results rather than your service. And
Mm.
I agree with that. That makes the process a lot easier. But the problem is we have to offer a wide range of services to get to the result.
Yes.
So if I talk about my specific service, that is website performance optimization,
Mhm.
you can call it speed optimization.
Yep.
And it is a major part of the big SEO.
Yes.
So I'm only offering this part. And I
Right.
don't want to offer the SEO and the off-page SEO and all that things,
Mhm.
because that would defeat the purpose of productized service.
Yes.
But the problem is, if I have to guarantee a result for the customers, I have to optimize their websites, which is
Mhm.
my service. In
Yep.
addition, I have to do their SEO. I have to do some conversion rate optimization.
Right.
Only then I would be able to promise some results like a 2% increase in conversion rate, 10%
Yeah.
more organic rankings.
Yes.
So how do I um, how do I not expand my services and
Right.
still be able to guarantee some sort of results?
Yes. Well, you're right. A lot of people talk about the idea of sell the result, not the service, and that makes sense. But at the end of the day, clients are looking at the deliverables you're providing as a proxy, as sort of an indicator of did it work or not. Now, the service you're offering around speed optimization is one where usually whatever you do, it's going to be faster than it was before, right? You don't always know how much faster, but things like cleaning up plugins and adding caching and like you have a range of things you can do to make the site faster. You don't always know how much faster, but it's going to be faster. So to me, you're actually in a good spot. So again, if the question is, how do we sell services without having to require a whole sales process? Your service would work with a buy now button. And the promise you're making is you're going to follow your process. And, here's a list of things that you typically look at. And your goal is to make it as fast as possible within that tool set, but you don't know exactly how fast it will be until you do it. Does that make sense? You could make an estimate of how much faster it would go, but you don't know for sure until it's all done. Is that correct?
I want to make a correction here. We want to offer business results. So I'm pretty
Ah,
confident that I will get you
oh,
this technical results and your
oh,
website will be this much faster.
okay,
I'm
okay,
pretty confident in that. What I'm not confident is achieving, like, at the end of the day, clients care about results. How much
yeah,
customers can you bring for us? How much more appointments?
right,
And you cannot do it alone with optimization. You have to offer
right,
other services
yes,
to it, and that would defeat the purpose of productizing. So
yeah.
how do I guarantee some sort of business results to the clients without expanding my range of services?
I think in your particular situation, realistically, you can only guarantee the technical result, that it'll be faster. And you
Mhm.
can't guarantee the business result because what you would need to do to guarantee a business result would be to be way more involved in terms of all of these other services, doing both on-site SEO, off-site SEO, all this other stuff. So to me, like my advice would be, it's okay to focus on the technical results. and not worry about the business result. That's okay, because you're offering something that, you can run the speed test of the relevant speed test site or program of choice before and after, and they can see the results. So I would say you don't have to pursue a business result, in part because, one, you're providing a strong technical result. And importantly, it's a technical result that I would say a sophisticated buyer understands. The faster their site runs, the better it'll be for their SEO. Like if someone comes to you, or they might even come to you if they don't care about site speed, they're like, I don't care how fast it runs. Like, I just want lots of backlinks, or I don't care how fast it runs. I just want, what have you. Well, they're not sophisticated enough to benefit from your help, right? If they don't get that site speed is important, they're not going to pay you. I once got that question. I was sharing advice with college students in like a career panel, and someone said, how do you get your clients to like value the work that you're doing for them? Like, are there some people that just don't value it? And I said, yeah, but they don't become paying clients, right? If someone doesn't value the work, they're not going to pay you anything. I would also say we could look at this the same way, Had, to your question. If someone is expecting business results solely from the site speed optimization, they're expecting too much. Like I did a speed optimization, I think last year or so, and it was just focused on that. It was just, the site feels slow. This was before doing a redesign and a rebuild. Like, what can we do before we do that? And we did it, and it was faster. It wasn't as fast as the totally rebuilt site, but it was also a fraction of the budget compared to redesigning the whole thing, and also the time. Like I was able.
Can I add something here?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure what speed optimization service you used, but talking about my particular optimization services,
Yeah.
it's falling on the higher end range. So I have to do some value-based pricing.
Yeah.
That's the
Well, so that might be an opportunity. If you want to do value-based pricing for the service, you could say, if we increase it up to, say, up to 10%, or you'd have to figure out what the percentages would be. The price is this. That covers the base of doing things. On the other hand, if you can increase it at a higher amount, then there's a higher price, and a further higher amount, there's that. And you don't have to share the numbers out loud, but can you think of what 3 percentage breakpoints of like this much faster would be worth it for you and for clients?
Yes, definitely I can come up with that.
Okay.
But the question still remains that how would I communicate with them that of course, if you just log into your Shopify dashboard, it says the online store speed. And Shopify clearly states that by increasing your speed, you can significantly boost your conversion rates. So how do I communicate that, the potential business value of my service?
So in that case, I would take a look at what have other people written about. I just pulled in an article from Moz, for instance. They have an article on page speed, on optimization, things like that. I would say use experts outside of you. Like obviously you know it really well, but people tend to listen to someone else rather than necessarily the person who's selling a service. So for instance, if you could say, as you know, site speed is very important, both for SEO, and it tends to have business impacts as well. And then point them to articles from Moz, from Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, things like that. And so the point there is you're not guaranteeing the business result, but you have, the editor of an SEO publication saying, this is so important. You're borrowing their authority to say, this is helpful to your business. So you could say to your clients, I don't know the exact business impact. I know that I can make your site faster, and we have basically the faster I make it go, the more you pay because you're getting these benefits. And what are the business benefits? Well, that'll be unique to your business. But here are all of these industry experts talking about the business benefits of it. Like, you don't need to believe me, believe them, kind of thing. So it's kind of a multi-part thing. And Anne, thank you for sharing the article there about how site speed issues are hurting revenue. So
Cost of inaction.
so that's the angle I would go with. Basically, value-based pricing on how much faster you can get things to go, and then tie to various industry experts. Obviously, you are an expert at this, but people at publications or things like that to help make the case for it. So that's what I would try. And I'd love to hear how it goes. We're about to switch over to the final Q&A segment. What are your next steps from here, Had?
Can I share something about the buy now button, which is our topic today?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Since I mentioned earlier, our service lies on the higher end. So there are people, majority, that offer this service for like $250. And our service starts at $2,000 and up to $7,000, and it goes up and up.
Yes.
So the problem is when I have a buy now button on my website,
right,
and there's such a huge gap between what others are charging and what I'm charging.
Yes.
So the problem is that, of course, there's a big difference in what they do. They just, do some cookie cutter, throw a plugin and say it's optimized. Okay. Right. We don't do that.
No.
So the problem is prospects. Usually they don't have the time or energy to distinguish between what they are offering and what our service includes.
Right.
Or maybe they're not sophisticated enough to see why is there such a huge gap. So when prospects see that, okay, $2,000, $350, they'll naturally say, okay, let me just try the $350, and if it doesn't work, I will just move to the 2,000. So I usually jump on a 1 hour call with them and walk them through all of the technical differences between them and us.
Yeah,
and it's a very tedious task.
Yes. I have a suggestion of something to try. Now, at that price point, relative to the competitors, can you do a buy now button? In that particular set of circumstances, maybe not, but I do have a way to help you not have to spend an hour on a call every single time someone reaches out, which would be this. Record a Loom or other kind of on-demand video that they can watch. Ideally, a version that you record once and that people can watch forever. Or you'll probably want to update it every few months as things change. But basically, the video would be something like this. We're an expensive option. Why are we expensive, and why should you work with us instead of someone who charges way less? Well, if your goal is just to save money, sure, go with someone cheaper first. But here's what you get with us. And you might be like, what do you guarantee? We guarantee this and this. The other people don't. We do this, we do that. Like basically laying out the things that you do differently, and let people decide for themselves. Some people will say, you know what? They only want to pay $250, and you're never going to persuade them, right? And I thought of another example. I have a client, I have a case study on him, Mike King of iPullRank. He did this really great article a few years ago about SEO for the procurement professional. I've shared a link to that in chat if you're going live. And he has a comparison about different types of agencies and software firms and things like that. And it basically lays out like how SEO works and what are the pros and cons of different options. And, yes, it does recommend his agency as the ideal combo of things, but it's a good comparison. So I think about what the comparison might be, and then, record it as a video once and see if that helps you get out of having to do a call. You still might have some email interaction, but you may not have to do a full-length call with everyone. So that's what I tried.
Thank you very much.
All right, Hud, thank you so much. Let me know how it goes.
Sure.
All right, next up, our final question today is Ashley. Ashley, if you want to, here we go, come on video. Thank you so much for joining Agency Office Hours.
Thanks. It's good to be here. It's got a lot of great insight so far.
Awesome. Well, you had asked about SOPs, standard operating procedures, and a few angles to that. But ultimately, what are some best practices about SOPs and how to approach it? I know one of your questions was, for instance, around hyperlinking. Should you have individual SOP documents and then backlink, or put it all in one document? Well, let's take a look at that.
Okay.
So, ideally, you would have separate documents about different things that need to happen, and then link them centrally. The challenge becomes, and we'll talk a bit about this, the challenge becomes, how granular should you get? Should an individual task have its own document, or should that be a section in a larger document? So what's an example of something that you're thinking about, or either that you have documented or you're thinking about documenting?
So one of the ones that we're currently working on outlining is client communication. We have account managers and project managers on our team, and we also have project coordinators on our team. And typically the account managers are the only ones that have direct communication with our clients. If we have a project manager associated with an account, he or she will have some type of communication with the client at some point, but the main point of contact is usually that account manager.
Yes.
What we're working on is outlining all of the necessary details for communicating with a client from the moment we onboard them to continuing communication, and just kind of giving a standardized process for every single point of contact and every single, every email that you would send based on project timelines, project budget, if you're going out of scope, almost templated emails, if you will. Just, hey, this is kind of what that email needs to say, so that we are always staying in constant communication with the client, but being upfront. And the content of those emails is pretty standard across the board, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. And that also helps fix a problem that some agency owners have mentioned to me, where they're saying, depending on the account manager, the client is having a totally different experience. Right? It's like they're working with a totally different agency because every AM does things differently. Now, people should have the option to improvise and manage things, within reason, but there should be a fairly consistent approach. I like, by the way, that you have templates for different client communications. That's something I've created in my agency profitability toolkit around 60 plus documents, resources. One of them is scripts, 42 scripts for difficult client conversations. To the earlier point Jonathan shared, we actually shared that in the scope creep workshop. And, with that in mind, my recommendation, Ashley, for you would be, for instance, have an account manager or account management, or you could call it client relationship or client success handbook. So that would be one document that's all about your agency's approach to client management. And that would include some philosophical things at the beginning. For instance, for me, something that's really important at Sakas & Company is the idea of warmth and competence. Comes from the book, The Human Brand. Basically, it's not just you focus on competence, get the job done, but warmth, make clients feel special. So you'll have some philosophical things up front, like, here's what is unique about us versus other agencies, and then get into specifics. So for instance, after you've laid out the philosophy, you might say, client onboarding actually starts during the sales process. Like, in an ideal world, the account manager is the one who presents the proposal to the client, or at least they're in the meeting when the salesperson is sharing the proposal. And then the account manager is onboarding, like leading the paperwork. The salesperson might still be involved for any questions. The account manager leads the kickoff meeting. The salesperson attends it. So if there are any questions of like, I thought that was included, the salesperson can be like, well, no, you didn't want to pay for that. So no, that's not included. And then the account manager takes it from there. So, you would have, here's our philosophy. Here are the major stages in the relationship. I think it does make sense to link out to other documents around, for instance, here's what the onboarding email should say. That way, because otherwise, I mean, like the onboarding email could take up a page of the document, and then you have more. You could have a 100-page handbook. Whereas if it's an account manager handbook that links out to further details, you can get it to 20 pages, and then people can go to the thing they need when they need it.
Gotcha.
The analogy I'm thinking of here is in aviation, pilots will use a quick reference handbook, which are going to be the, kind of one-pagers about, for instance, engine failure, although some of them they have to have memorized. But okay, engine failure, do this, do this, do this, do this. And they're following through that list. You can give your team a quick reference handbook as well. They could flip through in the account manager handbook. If this happens, like a client is unhappy about a certain thing, do this. Now, ideally, you'll hire account managers who have experience with various things, and they generally know what to do, but it helps to have a quick reference. So in that case, you might have the account manager handbook that links out to talks about philosophy, links out to details, and also has some quick reference items. This happened, they click the link, and they get the quick reference about what to do there.
Gotcha.
What's your reaction to that?
It's pretty on. I feel like it's on par with what we are, like what we've done some research, and it's kind of the process we're taking. And I really just more so wanted some validation in that at the same time to see that this is like the right way we're doing this, because we're investing a good bit of time in like creating these SOPs and trying to organize them because we're a virtual company. And we're completely remote. And so organizing everything on our drive where it is easily accessible, but also easy to find when you need it the most. And so that's kind of where that question of backlinking comes in is, we could have a 20-page SOP document, but there are pieces of that, like the things that are linked in that document might be in, say, a client communications folder, but also in an operations folder. And that's kind of where that question came into play.
I think ultimately, if you can get your account managers trained on this is the first place to look, and you don't want the document to be too overwhelming. This is the place to look, and then they can click the links out. And certainly, there are different tools to track this. The simplest that I'll see is using Google Drive, right? You've got one document that lists the main things, and then there are subfolders and subdocuments with everything else and all. My one suggestion would be if there's some sort of a kind of a general email account, make sure the documents are owned by that, rather than like, oh, someone leaves and like, where'd the document go, kind of thing. That can help. But it sounds like, to validate you're on the right track. And for everyone else who's listening, if you're thinking of things like this, definitely do it. It's a lot easier when your team doesn't have to make up everything from scratch. As I shared in my second book, Made to Lead, if you take time to plan for the expected, you'll have time to improvise the unexpected. So, Ashley, as we're wrapping up today, any specific follow-ups that you're planning to do at this point?
I think I would say that this particular follow-up for like the client communication SOP that we're working on right now, it'll be the creating those documents, like the standardized email templates and putting them, backlinking them in there. But also we don't have that philosophy section, and we don't have the stages of the relationship added to that client SOP. And I think that's a key element that's been missing. So I'll be going in and adding that as well. So thank you for that tidbit of insight. I appreciate that.
Well, and thank you for joining, and Ashley, let me know how it all goes.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, that concludes today's agency office hours for August 2023, or, well, infinity, depending on when you're watching the video. Hope to see you next month. We're meeting on the second Tuesdays of the month in this time slot. And of course, you can see all of the videos from past sessions at sakasandcompany.com. So thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, Karl Sakas here. Good luck out there.